What do you call a wreath made of $100 bills? Aretha Franklin's. What up, YouTube? Scott here. Excuse me. Thanks again for visiting the channel. As always, I appreciate it. If this is your first time to the channel, thank you so much for watching. Please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button just for the algorithm. And if you enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate that. A few things before we get started with our video here. On Instagram, if you would be so kind, go ahead and follow me at lets_do-it-up. LETS_DOITUP. If you would like to send a knife or knives into the channel for review, please just go ahead and send me an email to letsdiu79@gmail.com. As soon as you send me the email, I will send you my shipping address. You can send the knife or knives in. I will spend a week or two with them, and then I will send them back after I do the review. A couple more things. There's a gentleman that I've been watching on YouTube for quite a while. His name's Armando. Do me a favor and follow him. I wrote Instagram here because I'm an idiot, but he is on YouTube at Pew Pew Nation TV, PEWNATION TV, and that is on YouTube. Please go ahead and give him a follow, or I'm sorry, give him a sub, and go and check out some of his stuff. He's got a lot of great content, a lot of 2A stuff, Second Amendment, if you don't know what 2A stands for. And he's just an awesome guy. He's a four-tour Navy vet, and he's been around for a bit. Also came from Cuba to live here in the States. So please, again, go ahead and follow or subscribe to him on Jesus Christ, subscribe to him on YouTube. I'd really appreciate that. And I'm going to be going on his website to do a live stream with him in regards to a few different things. He's doing it on his website because if he did it on if he did it on YouTube, we would both probably get deplatformed. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave that right there because I'm hoping that you guys will come and watch our live stream and just chime in with us, talk with us. That'd be awesome. Just visit his website at www.pewpewnationtv unchained. There's no slash there. I just wrote that because it's impossible to get the whole thing on one sheet of what do you call these things? Review cards or whatever. So yeah, it's www.pewpewnationtvunchained.com. You have to register on the site and then pay a $199 per month membership fee to watch. It's not a lot of money, so I would really appreciate it if you guys would do that and come and hang out with us for a little while. This is going to be on Tuesday night at 8:15, I believe, Eastern Standard Time. So again, Tuesday night, 8:15 Eastern Standard Time. Beforehand, go to this website and just register and pay the membership fee if you would like to see and hear what we have to say. He's, like I said, he's an awesome guy. He's a lot of fun. So I hope you guys come to watch. But I am doing a quick video. This is actually, I spent more time on this video than I've ever spent on any of my other videos at all. I normally just come in and do the video and just slap it onto YouTube, and I put a couple of links there, and that's the end of it. This one I had to do quite a bit of research just to get the, find out what's available, what's not. A lot of these knives will be available. Some of them will not. But this is my 20 favorite knives that are overbuilt and or hard use in my collection. There's a few small knives. There's some knives that maybe couldn't be considered hard or overbuilt, so I am prefacing that with and or hard use. So, but first, I am starting with a few honorable mention knives. So I'm not doing this in any particular order whatsoever, so I'm not going to do these knives in any particular order either. So this first one here is the MEDFORD Smooth Criminal. Pretty good action. It is a button lock with a aluminum frame handle, and I'm going to be going kind of fast here, guys, so if you need to hear something again or whatever, you can just rewind the video. But aluminum scales, you've got S45 VM blade steel, drop point, and you can see here it has a flat grind all the way down. This is obviously from MEDFORD. It's the smallest knife that they make, but it's also the most affordable knife that they make, so that's why I have this one in my collection. And I like it a lot. I just don't use it all that much just because it's so small. But if you're looking to have a Medford in your collection, this is a great one. And this is definitely something that I would consider a hard use knife. With this button lock here, it locks up solid, and the scales are made of aircraft grade aluminum. The blade is S45VN. Like I said, it's going to put up with quite a bit of damage. Not necessarily damage, but it'll put up with quite a bit of abuse if that's your thing. Next here is the MICROTECH SOCOM Elite double edge. And we have the aluminum on the lock side, not the lock side, the, the non-show side, and you have G10 on the show side. Obviously, you can see this thing has fantastic action. I don't know that I would call this overbuilt or hard use, but I mean, this could put up with a whole bunch of abuse if you wanted it to. I mean, it's a really great knife, you just can't use it in different elements like sand or dirt or stuff like that. But if you've got some pretty heavy duty cutting, this thing I think could handle it. So if an automatic is something that you guys are really looking for, whether it's for hard use or not, I think this will definitely do the job. It fires out with tons of power, fires back in with tons of power, and I absolutely love this knife. They're very, very expensive though, so you know, that's one thing to consider. But these are seriously available right now all over the place. I haven't seen this many combat troodons available in I don't think ever, honestly. They're everywhere. So I'll link these in the description so you can find that if you'd like to. The next one is the CHAVES 229 REDENCION Street. That's the smaller version. You've got this beautiful hollow ground blade, also a tanto, so it has a straight edge out at the end. And you've got G10 on the show side and obviously titanium on the lock side with this titanium skull clip, so that also makes it pretty cool. But this knife can tolerate just about anything you can put it through, even though it's a smaller knife. Definitely not overbuilt, but this is something that I would definitely consider hard use. You've got the thick scales here and the plenty thick blade stock thickness here. I'm not sure, I'm not going to say specs or anything on any of these guys because otherwise the video would be like 12 hours long, but it's a fantastic knife. It locks out rock solid and it goes back down to the handle with almost no encouragement whatsoever. Just another fantastic example of a small hard use folder if that is what you are looking for. Next up is going to be my my SPYDERCO Manix 2 XL, which I got copper scales for, and I also got the copper cage lock button on this guy. Everything else, as you can see, came with the knife, the liners, and all this other stuff. But I would definitely consider this a hard-use knife. I mean, it's gigantic. It's got almost a 4-inch blade on it, and this thing is not necessarily terribly thick out to the edge, but it can put up with a lot of abuse, I feel like, especially with these copper scales on them. I did put them into rock salt and ammonia, just to get this patina on it. I'm probably going to sand it down and redo it so there's a lot more blues in it. I don't know if you can see those or not. There you go. Yeah, but the Manix 2 XL is definitely, in my opinion, a hard use knife for sure. And this guy is also available. You can find this a few different places. Again, I will link those in the description for you if you would like to buy that. This one here is the DIRAC Delta. Basically the same concept as the Combat Troodon. Only difference is this one has the button on the show side, which I like a lot better than having it on top of the knife here. But basically everything else is just about the same. You've got the same aluminum, you've got the same pocket clip, and this thing fires out even harder than the Combat Troodon does, and obviously goes back into the handle with no problem whatsoever. It basically just appears and disappears. I think this knife is fantastic. Again, very expensive, but if an OTF is what you're looking for, this, in my opinion, is well worth the money. So, those are the honorable mentions. We will go ahead and get started with the regular knives now. Now, again, these are in no particular order, so some of them are going to be very, very, extremely budget-friendly knives, and other ones are not going to be extremely budget-friendly knives. I consider a budget knife to be basically anything under $100, $75 to $100. But I know that people throughout the community have different ideas of, expensive, extremely expensive, ultra expensive. I don't really have anything ultra expensive, but I do have a lot of very expensive knives in my collection. So the first one here is the CIVIVI BULLMASTIFF. Now this is going to be your best option for a budget knife. This guy's like 30, I think 35 to like 50 bucks. You obviously got an extremely large cleaver style blade here. As you can see, I use this guy quite a bit. It's not exactly super thick out towards the tip, but the tip on the bottom here is pretty thin, but you've got quite a bit of steel out here towards the end of the knife, or the end of the blade rather. Very generous blade stock thickness. G10 liners, or sorry, G10 scales with steel liners and a stainless steel pocket clip, which is deep carry. This is something that I was extremely interested in, and I don't know if you'd say passionate, but I was really excited about this knife when I first got it. Obviously, I've moved to a different level of my knife collecting right now, so I'm collecting stuff that's a lot more expensive. But this is still a knife that I like to use from time to time, just because it kind of reminds me of when I got into the hobby and how exciting it was for me. So this is just a flipper. There's no thumb studs or anything on this guy. Obviously, you're going to get what you pay for. The quality on this guy is just a little bit lower than some of the other stuff, but it's still an excellent knife. I don't think it would be for everyday carry, because all of these knives here are going to scare the hell out of people. So, if you're into extremely big or extremely overbuilt or hard use knives, just kind of remember to choose your audience wisely, because a lot of people are going to get terrified by this thing. Next one. I'm going to assume that most of you know what this is already. This is the MICROTECH SOCOM Elite. Very popular knife in the knife community, very hard to get usually. Right now they've actually got some available, which is surprising to me. So you can get this knife if you'd like to, and I will leave the description, or sorry, the link for it down in the description. This guy has a full 4-inch M390 blade with a whole bunch of writing here on the blade, but that's not a big deal. I don't really care that much about that. And again, aircraft grade aluminum scales with this grippy kind of rubbery material here in the inlay. You've also got a very small glass breaker here, which is pretty cool. I like it when it's not the size of my thumb. And it locks up with these thumb studs out towards the end here. And just a really good hard use knife. Definitely not overbuilt. But as you can see, this thing will put up with just about anything you put it through. It's got a titanium liner on the inside. And again, it locks up rock solid with these studs out here. One of my favorite knives in my collection. Super happy I finally got it. I've only had it for a few months now, but this is an awesome knife if you are into this kind of shape, tanto blade shape. They do come in drop point, and they're not super expensive either. I think they're only like a little over $300, which isn't terrible for me, especially for a knife that's very, very hard to get. Next up on the list here is a knife community favorite, the Colt Steel 4MAX Scout. Clearly extremely thick blade stock. We are looking at here AUS 10, but a lot of people go with the more expensive model. This is the 4MAX Scout. The more expensive version is just the 4MAX, and that costs quite a bit. I'd say at least $250, I think, more than the 4MAX Scout. The 4MAX Scout you can get for about 60 bucks. And it's just your ultimate hard use overbuilt knife. You got this triad lock back here, which works very, very well. Most people in the knife community say that the triad lock is the strongest lock in the knife community, which I'm not going to argue with that, but there are definitely some locks out there that I feel like are at least as close to, if not, even with the 4MAX's strength. What else can I say? You've just got Grivery scales here with stainless steel liners and a plastic backspacer. And I don't have the pocket clip on mine, but the pocket clip for this guy is really, really thick. It's almost the width of the handle here. But just a fantastic, I mean, you could baton with this thing, cut down a fucking tree if you wanted to. This thing is fantastic, and I absolutely love it. I use it all the time, but I don't have occasion to really cut through wires or anything like that on a daily basis. So there's not a lot of scratches on here. There were some snail trails, but I cleaned it off before I got it onto the screen just because I wanted her to look her best. Next up here is going to be another one of my favorites in my collection, the Spartan HARSEY Folder Plague Doctor Edition with the black DLC blade. Again, one of my favorite knives in my collection, just because you don't see this a lot. You'll see the green and blue Plague Doctor versions, but a lot of them, or most of them, have just satin or tumbled finishes on the blade. Not a lot of them have DLC coating, so I was really excited to find this one. It was just about the same price. I don't know that I'd call this a hard or an overbuilt knife. It's pretty standard compared to like the Hinderers and stuff like that. But it's definitely a hard use knife, and a tactical one at that. 4-inch blade, titanium scales, huge pivot, and then you've got these, I believe these are T10 screws for the body and T8 screws for the pocket clip. You don't have an over travel stop on this guy or a steel lock bar insert, but I do believe that the lock face is carbidized. But the pivot here acts as the over travel stop for this guy, which is absolutely fantastic. Whips out real, no problem whatsoever with the thumb studs. You push the lock bar away and the blade falls, and then it very smoothly, very evenly just falls right back down into the handle. This is a great knife. They are very expensive. This is going to run you somewhere between, let me see here, the Spartan HARSEY, $465 to $650. The $465 obviously is going to be just the plain Jane version, and they get a little bit more expensive as you go into more detail with these guys. And then the ones that are more detailed with Jesus Christ, with Damascus blades are going to cost you around $650. But something with a regular blade and the detailed handles, those are going to cost you, I think, around $500. So these are really nice knives to have. They're easy to use. You can even front flip this thing, but I have a hard time doing that, so I'm not really going to show you that. Next up here is another classic. One of the only two Benchmade knives that I own, because I can't stand Benchmade, but I absolutely love the ADAMAS. Great knife. I also own the Super Freak, but I don't believe that qualifies as a hard use knife, but the ADAMAS certainly does. You've got this thick blade stock with this coated blade. I believe this is PVD, but I could be wrong. And what is it, Crewwear? Yeah, Crewwear blade. You've got these micarta scales with stainless steel liners, and it also comes with a stainless steel pocket clip, and you've got the Axis lock here, which is a very strong, very popular lock in the knife community right now. So I definitely think that this qualifies as a hard use knife for sure. Next up is going to be another very popular knife in the knife community, the Hinderer XM18. I have mine in working finish. This is a Spanto blade. You've got flat grinds all the way down the length of the blade, even at the tip, even though you've got this kind of Tanto line here. Very thick blade stock, titanium lock side with a steel lock bar insert. You've got a titanium liner, and then you've got a G10 scale. You use Torx heads for the regular screws, and then you can just use a flathead screwdriver for the pivot. Titanium pocket clip as well. Jimping all over the place. This thing is really easy to hold on to. I would not call this an overbuilt knife, but I would call this a hard use knife for sure. And everybody knows that Hinderer is known for their hard use knives. Next on the list is going to be the XM24. Something that I would call overbuilt and certainly hard use. As you guys know, this is just the big brother of the XM18. It's pretty much the same knife, but I wanted to show them both just because there's such a big size difference between these two knives. I'll put these down so you can see the size difference between the two. I've always wanted both of these. I didn't really, I wanted to have an XM18, but I really, really wanted to have an XM24. So you guys can see the difference there in size. I've got them lined up pivot to pivot, and the XM24 has, I'd say, about an inch, maybe a little bit more on the XM18. So that's it for these two. Put those guys back down on the table. The next one is the Strider by Medford 3/4 AR, which is another one of my favorite knives in my collection. I bought this guy off of Sawtooth Dave. He was very generous and allowed me to buy this guy because I was super in love just with the knife in general. I always have been, but I really love this this frag patterning here on the brass scale. Adds a little bit of weight to the knife, but this thing is fantastic. You've got that see-through pivot there, clearly thick blade stock, as you can see. I'm not sure what the blade stock thickness is on this guy, but it's pretty goddamn thick. You've got titanium on the lock side. You've also got the over travel disc here, and you don't have, let me check here. I think there's a steel lock bar insert there. I could be wrong though. I'm not really sure. I can't really get it to light up that well on the screen. But I do believe there is a steel lock bar insert in there. A little bit I wouldn't say very compact, but it's a little bit compact. But this is definitely an overbuilt hard use knife for sure. And I think that it helps that this guy was made by Medford. As you can see, you've got more kind of like the Strider profile on the scales here. And you've also got kind of like the Medford profile here with the way they ground the blade and everything. But I think that these two makers came together and made a really fantastic knife. I absolutely love this thing. I will never ever get rid of it. Not a chance. Next up is going to be one of my all-time favorites. the SPYDERCO SHAMAN. Not really overbuilt, but definitely a hard use knife for show. Thick blade stock. You can see I don't use this guy very often for anything more than just like cutting open boxes and stuff like that. But as I said again, I don't really have occasion to cut much more than just boxes and packages and stuff like that. So you can see that this is S30V steel, which is still a fantastic steel, even though they don't use it very much anymore. The ergonomics on this guy are absolutely fantastic. If you have to use this for long periods of time, even if you're wearing gloves, even if you're not wearing gloves, it's going to be super duper comfortable. Absolutely love this knife. One of my favorites in my collection for show. Next up is the CHAVES 229 Standard. Love this knife. I had to hunt for this knife for probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years before they finally released more of the standard size. I'd first gotten the street version because I really enjoyed that, the aesthetics of the knife and everything like that, but I really wanted the bigger one. As you can see, you've got a pretty decent blade stock thickness here, even though it does get kind of thin out towards the tip of the knife. But you've also got thick titanium for the lock side. You've still got that skull pocket clip there, which is absolutely fantastic. I love the skull pocket clip on these guys. And you have a micarta show side here, just a standard brown micarta. I put some oil on that to darken it up a bit because it was a little bit splotchy. But yeah, I think this guy would be able to, go through anything you have to put it through. Plenty of jimping to be able to get your thumb locked in there. This finger choil here, I think people with normal size fingers would be able to actually use, but I can't use them because they're too small. And this one actually is M390 blade steel as well. Next up on the list is the CRKT Gulf. This is a very affordable knife, and it's really a good knife. This guy comes in at 65 bucks. You can find this on a few different websites. It's a little bit more expensive on Amazon, so I wouldn't go to Amazon for this if I were you. But if this is something that interests you, absolutely buy this guy. It's 65, 60 bucks, something like that. Very affordable. You got some knurling here on the thumb studs. Big old drop point blade with a flat grind, and you've just got G10 scales with a stainless steel liner on both sides, and this is just a regular liner lock. Not super duper smooth, but this is running on washers, so that's going to be expected. I don't know that I'd consider this a overbuilt knife, but I definitely think that this is something that could be considered hard to use for sure. With that liner lock locking up, it locks up at about 65%, which is a little bit too much for me. But I think that just makes it more solid. I don't know why this isn't focusing. There we go. So yeah, I think that this liner lock here works really well. Like I said, it is a little further over than I'd like, but this blade isn't going anywhere at all. Absolutely solid, no problems with this whatsoever. Next on the list is another crowd favorite, the UMNUMZAAN. Not overbuilt for sure, but it definitely is a hard use knife. You've got those big phosphor bronze washers in there, big pivot, thumb studs locked out on the opening, and for the I believe they also lock the blade in when it's closed. I've been kind of leery about saying that ever since the knife. I can't remember which knife it was. I think that was the Evo that I said it didn't have a stop pin, but it did because I'm an idiot. But yeah, this one does not have a stop pin. The lugs just lock it in and lock it down, stop it from going too far. Tanto blade, I love the Tanto blade on this guy, and I wish I had the one with the harpoon notch on it, but this is the one I was able to find and buy, so I'm very happy with it. Titanium scales. Everybody knows that Chris Reeve is kind of known for making hard use knives, but that are a little bit more refined than maybe the Hinderers or something like that. Titanium pocket clip. Standoffs are pretty large as well. Just a very sturdy knife, nice jimping on the spine of the blade there. Great action. You can whip it out. You have to give it a little bit of assistance back into the handle once it's disengaged. But that's just because it's a little bit tighter, because that's how they make their knives. With those phosphor bronze washers in there, it's still very smooth, and just one of my favorite knives of all time. Absolutely. Next up is going to be another budget knife. This is the SR1 Lite. Which is another fantastic knife. I had two of these. I had the drop point and the Tanto, but I decided to give one of them away, so obviously I gave away the drop point because I'm more into Tantos than I am drop points. This one also has the the axis lock, which cold steel fans absolutely love, and say this is the strongest lock in the world. But again, it's a fantastic knife. It's not going to fail on you. The handle will fail before the blade lock will, for sure. Just lots of steel in here. The way this knife works just makes it an absolute beast. You could definitely baton with this thing, no problem. Whatever you wanted to do with this, you would be able to do. Just look at that blade stock thickness there. That's ridiculous. I absolutely love this knife. One of my favorites for sure. Next up is the BERGG Blades Iron Wolf, which I think looks more like a hunting knife, but I definitely think that you can consider this a hard use knife. You got the titanium bolster lock there, big pivot, and this, I believe this is 20 CB steel with quite a thick blade stock all the way down to the tip. This thing is absolutely fantastic, and it's a very good looking knife as well, in my opinion. This is one of the favorites in my collection. I'm actually trying to sell this guy right now just to make a little more money for another knife, but that's the only reason I want to sell it. If I didn't have to, I certainly wouldn't. Next up is the SPYDERCO TUFF. And it, you can see why it's named the TUFF. I mean, this thing is a beast. Blade stock thickness is ridiculous. The thickness on the scales is pretty standard, but there is titanium on the lock side. You can see that's a titanium frame lock, and on the other side, it's got a stainless steel liner with a G10 scale over that. Huge size pivot. I believe these are T8 screws, but the screws are bigger themselves, as a matter of fact. Sorry, guys, hold on. Okay, so yeah, the SPYDERCO TUFF, one of my favorite knives. I wasn't sure if I was going to put this in the video because you can't get this anymore, but I figured I'd just let you know about it and let you know the price, just in case anybody's interested and sees one on the secondary market. This guy was sold for, I think, around $315 on DLT Trading. This was a DLT Trading exclusive, and I was able to pick it up. But again, if you do see one on the secondary market, that's around the price they went for. So if somebody's asking like $600 or $700 for this thing, I definitely wouldn't buy it for that. Next is another crowd favorite, the 8020S. A lot of people own the 8020S, not a lot of people own the 8020, just because they're harder to get. But it's still a hard use knife. You got quite a good blade thickness here. Normally you get G10 scales with this guy. You can buy it with the titanium scales, but that's going to be a hell of a lot more expensive. But I currently have original goat aluminum scales on here, and I love them. I was thinking about getting some titanium scales for this guy, but I think this is going to make the knife too heavy, so I decided to stick with the aluminum for now. But as you can see, this knife looks very, very comfortable. Plenty of places to put your fingers. That's what she said. And you've got quite a big forward finger choil here, so that you can choke up on it as well. And the jimping extends down further on the spine of the blade, so that you can get your thumb in there too. So this is another great knife, whether you get it in the drop point or the shark's foot, but I prefer the shark's foot personally. These are pretty expensive, but I think I paid, what did I pay for this? I believe I paid $375 for it or something like that. But the standard 80-20 that you're going to get with G10 and all that stuff, I think that's like $500 or $600. So for that price, it's really not too bad. Next up on the list is another, I wouldn't call it a budget knife, but it's affordable for sure. The Proponent. Actually, I would consider this a budget knife. What am I saying? So this one is the blacked out version, except for the pivot collar there. G10 scales, stainless steel liners with some standoffs, and you've got, what are we looking at here for blade steel? I forgot to look at that. D2, yeah, so this is D2 steel. This thing is almost scary because it looks like a broken sword. If you were to try to do anything as far as puncturing with this guy, I don't think you're going to have any trouble, just because of the size and the length of the blade and the way it's shaped. This is great for puncture tasks, choking up on it and just doing controlled cutting, stuff like that. This knife is absolutely fantastic for that. But it's also, if it wasn't so short, you could baton with it. But I don't think there's much that you could throw at this knife that would cause any trouble with it at all. But that's definitely a more affordable option. I think those go for like $50 to $70 for the G10 versions. They do sell more expensive versions, but I've never been interested in those just because I don't want to spend that much money on it. The next one I would consider a hard use knife, but not an overbuilt knife. That is the VERO SUNAPSE XL. Now, as you can see, this is kind of built a little bit more for aesthetics. You've got the cross-cut the end-cut carbon fiber on here, titanium scales, DLC blade, and I've also got the Timascus kit for it. So you've got a backspacer, and you've also got a pocket clip that are made out of Timascus. So I obviously don't use this knife very much, very seldom actually. But the standard version of this has just G10 overlays on the titanium scale, or sorry, G10 overlays on the titanium liners, and like a satin blade or something like that. I think something like that would be good for a work site or something. They're pretty expensive. I think these go for around $370, $360, something like that, just standard. And then you have to pay extra for all the other stuff, like the Timascus kit, the carbon fiber scales. I had to pay for those. So it made the knife a little more expensive as well. But I don't think that $360 is too much to pay for this knife at all. It's a bruiser. It's a beast. It's bigger than hell. Super comfortable because you've got this open handle profile on here. And just anything that you would want to do with this knife, I feel like you'd be able to do. I mean, that's a 4-inch blade, sharp as hell. And Vero, just the way he comes at his designs, I just love the aesthetics of his knives for sure. Now, somebody asked about the XL, why they didn't put the openings on both sides of the blade. And he said because it was difficult for him to figure out how to make the hole here so that you could use it for the thumb flick. So he just figured he'd leave it out. And he made it like this instead. Let me give you a close-up view of this knife so that you can see all the absolute beauty of this guy. Sorry to slow it down again. But I absolutely love these scales for sure. And the Timascus is beautiful. I got a little scratch there, as you can see. But this is a fantastic hard-use knife, in my opinion. Next up, we've got two more. The KIZER Sheepdog XL. Everybody in the community probably knows about this knife already. As you can see, it's got a giant cleaver-style blade. Excuse me. Micarta scales, brown micarta scales, and you've also got a stainless steel liner lock with a stainless steel pocket clip. But I mean, you can hear this guy lock out, and it's not going anywhere. This thing is an absolute beast. Vault lockup, no problems with deployment whatsoever, and it even kind of falls back down into the handle with a little bit of shaking just because the blade is so goddamn heavy. This, however, is on bearings, so I don't know that I would use this as a hard use knife in a lot of situations where there's sand and dust and dirt and all that bullshit. But just as a standard, knife, like maybe, I don't know, out in the woods or something, you chop off some branches off a tree or something like that, this would be pretty good for that sort of thing. And the last but not least, for sure, is a knife that I wanted to show you guys just because it's a classic. It's been around forever, and there's a reason for that. Let me see if I can get the one thumb opening. Nice. So the Buck 110. This thing is rock solid. You could run this thing over with a tank, and nothing would happen to it. Got a 4-inch blade here, clip point, and very, very, very sharp. There's not a lot to cover here. I mean, you've got wooden scale inserts and what looks like brass bolsters. You've got a lock back here, so this lock is insanely strong. It's not going anywhere. You couldn't get this lock to fail if you wanted to. I don't care what you would do to it. It just wouldn't matter. But I just wanted to show this guy off because, again, it's a classic knife. It's been that way for a long time for a reason. And I think this is kind of a rite of passage for everybody in the knife community to own a Buck 110. I think that's it for today, guys. I don't have anything else to go over with you right now, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about that live stream that I'm going to be doing on Tuesday. If you need the address again, just go ahead and rewind the video and pause it on the address. Please visit Armando's website so that you can chat with us and everything, and I think it'll be a good experience. We're going to be talking about some pretty crazy stuff, but thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And stay up, y'all. Take it easy. Bye.